Welcome. Today we are going to tackle one of the biggest, most annoying headaches for new founders, getting your US tax IDs right. And look, this isn't just about paperwork. Getting this wrong can literally stall your launch for weeks, right when you need to be moving at lightning speed. So we're going to give you a clear, simple playbook to avoid all of that.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to demystify the three main tax IDs and why they're so darn confusing. Then, we'll build a practical toolkit, matching each ID to what you actually need to do to get your business off the ground. We're going to spend some real time on the path for international founders, because that's where most guides fall short. Then we'll cover the common mistakes that'll cost you time and money, and we'll wrap it all up with a simple 5-step launch sequence you can follow to get it right from day one.
All right, first things first, let's untangle this alphabet soup of tax IDs. You know, a big reason this is so confusing is that these numbers come from different government agencies and they're used for completely different things. So let's break it down. This is the million-dollar question for every founder, right? SSN, ITIN, EIN. It's just so easy to get them mixed up. But a simple misunderstanding right here can create a whole domino effect of delays. I'm talking from opening a bank account to bringing on your very first hire. So let's get super precise and define each one. Okay, let's start with the SSN, the Social Security number. Just think of this as your personal U.S. tax ID. But for you, as a founder, its most critical job is that it authorizes you to work in the United States. It's handed out by the Social Security Administration, and if you're a U.S. citizen or a non-citizen with work authorization, this is your key.
Next up, we've got the ITIN, the Individual Taxpayer ID. Now, this is also a personal number, but it's issued by the IRS for a really specific reason, to let people who can't get an SSN file their U.S. taxes. And here is the most important thing to remember. An ITIN does not, and I'll say it again, does not give you permission to work.
And finally, we have the EIN, or the Employer ID number. This one's different. It's not for you personally, it is for your company. The IRS issues this number, and it is absolutely essential for pretty much everything your business is going to do. The easiest way to think about it is like it's your company's own Social Security number.
So, look, if you take away just one thing from this section, please let it be this. Both the SSN and the ITIN are personal tax numbers, but only the SSN gives you the green light to actually work in the U.S. If you're eligible for an SSN, that is where you start. Trying to use an ITIN for employment is a huge, huge mistake. It really just boils down to this super simple rule. Your company gets an EIN, you, the founder, get a personal number, either an SSN or an ITIN. Just keeping that distinction crystal clear in your head will save you from like 90% of the common headaches people run into.
Okay, now that we have the definitions down, let's get practical. How do these IDs actually fit into the day-to-day chaos of launching your startup? Let's go ahead and build your Founder ID Toolkit. This table is so incredibly useful because it just lays out all the dependencies so clearly. You can see the EIN is the real workhorse for your company. You need it for banking, for hiring, for business taxes. But check out that line for the 83B election. That's a personal tax move that's related to your stock, so it requires your personal SSN or ITIN plus your company's EIN. It's a perfect example of how your personal and business IDs have to work together.
All right, this next section is super important, especially for our non-US founders. This is where a lot of online guides just get it plain wrong. But it's one of the most critical pathways to understand if you're building a global company from the US.
And this slide, it just gets right to the heart of it. Let me say that again because it's that important. You do not need a personal US tax ID to get a business tax ID for your company. This one fact completely opens the door for international entrepreneurs to set up a US entity the right way, right from the very start. So, if you're an international founder, your visa status is everything. If you have one of these work-authorized visas, like the O1, which is just fantastic for founders, or an H-1B, which now lets you sponsor yourself, you can and absolutely should apply for an SSN right away. This is your first and most important step.
But what if you're not on one of those visas yet? Let's say you're here on a visitor visa. You can still legally incorporate your company and get that all-important EIN. But here's the catch. You cannot work for that company or draw salary from it. But what this does is it creates a totally legitimate pathway to get your US entity established while you work on getting the right work visa.
Okay, so we know what the IDs are and what they're for. Now let's talk about the common mistakes that can completely, totally derail your progress. Avoiding these simple errors is just as important as knowing the rules in the first place.
You know, the number one mistake we see is founders applying for an ITIN when they're actually eligible for an SSN. Just remember the rule. If you have work authorization, you go for the SSN first. Another huge one is jumping the gun and applying for an EIN before your company is officially incorporated. The IRS actually checks state records, so your company has to be a legal entity first.
And when you're actually filling out the EIN application itself, there are a few specific traps. You have to list a real person, an individual, as the responsible party, not your company's name. And hey, here's a pro tip for international founders applying by fax. Always, and I mean always, include a return fax number. It sounds so small, but it can be the difference between getting your EIN in 4 days versus waiting 4 weeks.
We've covered the what and the what not to do. So now let's put it all together into the final playbook. This is the exact sequence, the optimal order of operations to get your company's legal and financial foundation set up correctly and efficiently.
Before we jump into the sequence, I want you to burn this number into your brain, 30. This is not a guideline, it is a hard, unchangeable deadline. You have 30 days to file your 83B election after you receive your stock. Missing this deadline can have truly painful tax consequences years down the road. So remember, 30.
And here it is, the optimal sequence. Step 1, incorporate. Only after your company legally exists do you then apply for the EIN. The moment you're granted stock, that 30-day clock for your 83B starts ticking. Do not forget it. Once you have your EIN, you can finally open your bank account. And last, you only need to worry about state tax IDs when you're actually ready to hire someone.
And I really can't stress this enough. The order here is not a suggestion. It's a requirement. The whole system is built on these dependencies. You will literally be blocked if you try to do these things out of order. You can't get an EIN for a company that doesn't exist yet, and no legitimate bank will give you a business account without that official EIN. Following the sequence isn't just smart, it's really the only way to avoid getting stuck.
And there you have it. You know, getting this administrative foundation right isn't the exciting part of your startup journey. It's the launch pad. By doing this correctly, you're not wasting your precious time and energy on solvable paperwork problems. You are free to focus on what really matters, building your company. So the question is, with your foundation set, what are you going to build on it?